Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
We try to start this podcast with a dad joke. I will oftentimes comment that even though I transitioned and am now living and navigating society as a woman, my dad jokes did not go away. Do you want to hear my worst dad joke?
I can't wait.
How many ears does Captain Kirk have?
2.
No, he has 3.
3.
A right ear, a left ear, and a final front ear.
When we take a look at the LGBTQ plus community, we often hear of coded language or conditional acceptance, saying expressions or thoughts and ideas that clearly say, I'm not accepting, but they say it in a kind of a accepting way.
We all experience things like this where you know how somebody really feels, but they try to couch it in other terms of saying it.
For example, saying things like, I love you, but I don't agree with your lifestyle. Or, I support gay people, but I don't want it shoved in my face. Those kinds of things.
And I remember this famous tweet. This was back in 2019 by J.K. Rowling. She was responding to a woman that had made some very transphobic comments and then got fired for it. She decided this was when she was going to start speaking up. And of course, now we see she holds a lot of very transphobic views.
Yes.
This was one of the very first ones. She said, dress however you please. Call yourself whatever you like. Sleep with any consenting adult who will have you. Live your best life in peace and security. But force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real? This is a conditional acceptance. She's trying to claim, look at how accepting I am. I completely accept you. Do whatever you want to. But just don't come down on people that express viewpoints that are transphobic. Or we see, don't come down on people that are expressing viewpoints that are homophobic or biphobic or otherwise hurtful to LGBTQ people. Look, let us hold our harmful viewpoints and don't ever correct us or come against us. You go and live your life however you want to. Just make sure that I don't have to see it.
That's like saying, I have these opinions in my mind about the fact that we should have slavery. So I get to say things my way, right?
Right. And you know what? If you don't believe that slavery is okay, that's fine. You just live your life over there. But don't try to impose on my life and tell me that it's wrong to hold slaves.
Exactly.
And don't try to impose on my life and tell me that my views on LGBTQ issues are wrong. I am fine rejecting you all for what you're doing. Well, no, it's not. And you're going to be tearing up your family.
I have to share my own life and where I was, where I've come from, and where I am. When I think about that, I could go back to the early years when I was a kid, right up through high school. I don't think that was ever part of our conversation. I don't think people even thought, are there gay people out there? Did we ever talk about that? Did we ever talk about lesbians? I don't even think I knew that word. I don't know, certainly, whether or not anybody had ever talked about transitioning. Those things just were not part of our conversation. They weren't part of our life. I'm sure there were kids in high school who were gay or lesbian, but no one said anything about it. They maybe didn't even know themselves, but they were there. When I went into the military right after high school, that's when I started hearing about LGBTQ plus issues. And again, mostly about gays because we were all guys in the Army. Rarely did people talk about lesbians, even at that point. This was in the early 60s. So that was something new and unusual to me, but I heard a lot of it. And naturally, I joined in. We've told a lot of gay jokes. We put these people down. we said terrible and embarrassing things, hateful things, not knowing or understanding what I learned after you came out, because I carried it through my post-military life from the time I was 21 up until I was about 70 years old when you transitioned. And at that point, I thought I was immediately accepting, because I said many times, when you first said this, my first thought was either I accept it or I lose you. And I wasn't going to lose you. So I, in my mind, said, I am accepting. But I really wasn't. It took me a while to learn more about that.
You had a long way to go in terms of learning.
Yes.
But if you could learn in your 70s and now into your 80s, I think that you are the picture that many people identify with, that they've thought, I've never even thought about these LGBTQ issues at all. It's never even been on my radar. When you talk about people in the military, I'm wondering if that culture starts because there are some people in the military that are trying to convince themselves that they are not gay, that they're not attracted to other men. So they push that really hard that, oh, you don't want to be gay in the military, because they need to remind themselves if they are hard enough on other people, then they can't be gay themselves. And then that becomes the culture. So you as a straight man then pick that up, and that becomes how you live your life.
That is true. That is exactly right on target.
Well, our goal is to understand why these kinds of coded language phrases feel kind to the person that's saying them, but to those of us in the LGBTQ plus community, they really land feeling very harmful. So when we talk about coded language, we're talking about language that's hiding an underlying judgment or bias.
Yes.
It's trying to pretend that it's polite or it's pious. It's concerned for you. So you hear examples all the time of, I support gay people. I just don't want it shoved in my face. Look, we welcome everyone. We just don't want you to stay how you are right now. Everyone is welcome here in our church because God loves all sinners. All of these things are meant to say, yes, I'm a good, loving person, but you are not a good person because of something inherent in who you are as an LGBTQ plus person.
Which is masqueraded as accepting, but is truly unaccepting.
Right. It's a soft version of rejection. So it lets them get off the hook in their mind. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a judgmental person. I'm not a hateful person. I love these people. I just disagree with their lifestyle. We're here to say that that conditional acceptance is not really acceptance at all. Now, that can be hard for you. You may have heard me talk about my background as a conservative Christian, and I really wrestled because I wanted to be affirming. I wanted to be accepting towards LGBTQ plus people, but I felt like my faith didn't allow me. And if you want to hear how I navigated that, go back and listen to our podcast from July 14th that talks about when loving your LGBTQ plus child feels like betraying God. That's really more than just children. It's anybody that's a loved one. How do you reconcile your faith with your LGBTQ loved one? We talk about that there and how I came to terms with that. In this podcast, we want to talk about that conditional acceptance and why it's so harmful.
Conditional acceptance is really a hidden wall. In my own personal life, I was a child who had a loving, wonderful mother and a father that was difficult to accept. It's not that he beat me or restricted me from a variety of things. He just wasn't there for me. I learned that he wanted everything his way, and he didn't want any sound. I was not to be making a lot of noise. He didn't want me playing with any of my toys in the living room. My mother used to say, your dad is coming home soon, so you got to put your toys away now. Those types of things. It was all rejecting me without saying anything, but just ignoring me. As long as I was quiet, as long as I was not seen or heard, I was okay. But if I was seen or heard, I would get in trouble. So that's how it was. I can remember after my mother and father got a divorce, when I was 7 years old, he had the opportunity to come and visit with me. He came once when I was 10 years old, and I was surprised. I didn't even remember much about him. He drove in the driveway. I went out, and I sat in the car with him. We talked light talk for a while. And then he told me, when my mother found out that she was pregnant, she didn't want me. And I thought, wow, that's terrible. The conversation ended. I went back in the house. My mother was there. She said, how was it? And I said, okay, kind of quietly. And then I started to cry. And she said, what's the matter? And I didn't want to say anything. She said, tell me, what's the problem? He said you didn't want me. I had a sister who was 16 years older than me. I had a brother that was 12 years older than me, another sister that was 10 years older than me. I came 10 years later. What she didn't want was another pregnancy, an unexpected surprise birth 10 years later. Life was kind of planned out, but she grabbed me and hugged me, and she said over and over and over, I want you now. I want you now. I want you now. And that meant the world to me. And here was a father that I didn't know that was giving me conditional acceptance, telling me she didn't want you, and therefore I'm your dad. You know, he didn't say he wanted me. And clearly he didn't. I remember that from when I was a kid. But the fact that she said, I want you now, that was immediate reassurance to me. It was my father's conditional rejection. And I could see that with that situation. It meant the world to me.
And you learned from that in how you parented me. And so then when I went through my own midlife crisis and came to terms with my own gender identity, yes, you said, I accept you or I lose you. But when I was struggling from myself and I was at the verge of thinking, I don't know that I even want to continue on any longer. I don't know that I can go on living because living this life seems not worth it and transitioning seems not worth it. All of my options seem terrible. And I remember that day that you took me and you sat me down in your office and you said, if you need to transition, and that's what it takes for you to continue being here with us, then you need to do that for the sake of your children.
Yes.
And we see then that pattern going through, that you broke the pattern of how your father treated you.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to treat me then with acceptance, and you were able to pass that on so that I could continue being here for my children. And hopefully we have a pattern now where they will pass on that unconditional acceptance to their children.
It was clear to me that you were considering either transitioning or suicide.
It was a hard period.
Of course it was. And I said, you need to be there for your children.
And I think I thought I could muscle my way through it. I could just, if I just kept trying hard enough. But you saw how it really was.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to get through, is that conditional acceptance is basically a way of telling your loved one, you need to find a way through it. Even if you don't have it in you, I demand that you find a way through it.
Right.
And you can't.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
can't. In the LGBTQ plus community, we've tried to get rid of it. We've tried to pray away the gay. We have tried to have demons cast out of us, and we've tried that accountability partner that was going to keep us accountable. We've tried letting people know. We've tried journaling, and we've tried reading this book, and we've tried everything you can think of. And the more that you hold our relationship with you to that standard of conditional acceptance, the more that you're telling us who we really are is not okay. It erodes our self-worth. It forces us to suppress our identity. And more than anything, it breaks trust with us. It's like saying to someone, hey, you're welcome to come over for dinner. We would love to have you. We just want you to sit in the corner over there and please just don't talk.
Well, let's hope the dinner is so good that I'm just going to concentrate on chewing.
Boy, you think about the energy cost of having to hide who you are. It is exhausting to have to constantly manage which parts of yourself are acceptable.
Love the sinner and hate the sin. Sounds like it's great, but there is a lot of harm behind that, and we're going to tell you more about it right after this.
I am Mark Ziemer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
I remember the day that I left my conservative evangelical faith. I was a worship leader in my church, and I was driving in. It was a Wednesday night, and I was going to lead our worship rehearsal for our entire worship team. And I was thinking about LGBTQ issues and my friends that were out there. And I thought, but certainly I have a faith that has helped me in my life, and if only I could share that with them, it would be good for them. And as I was driving along, I asked myself that one fateful question. Has my faith made me a better person, a more loving person, a more generous person, or has it made me a more judgmental person? And when I stopped and truly faced up with that question, I had to admit to myself that it had made me a more judgmental person. And I thought specifically of a friend of mine from high school. Now, he's not even LGBTQ himself, but I remember thinking, he does not hold the same faith that I hold. Well, sure, he calls himself a Christian, and I know when we grew up together that he went to confirmation, but he doesn't hold the right kind of faith. And if I were to be around him again, the only loving attitude that I could have towards him would be to recognize that he doesn't have the right kind of faith. And then I would have to try to convince him to have the kind of faith that I have. And I realized my faith was not making me more loving, more acceptable, more accepting. It was not making me more like Jesus. It was making me a more judgmental person. I pulled over on the side of the road and I started weeping. And I realized this is not the kind of life that I want to live anymore.
So that was your turning point right there. What is our relationship with God? It's all about a loving relationship. What's the greatest commandment? Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And the second one is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the biggies. That's it right there.
Religious teachings that can claim that they can separate the person from their behavior does not work. Because our gender identity, our romantic or sexual orientation, those are not behaviors. Those are part of who we are. And so when you group in who we are, when you group in who we are with any other sin, so for instance, you're hateful towards people, you're angry towards people, you create divisions among people. When you group those in as if they're the same thing, you're essentially creating a hierarchy of love. Yes, those other people out there that are doing bad things, they can change. And so therefore you can change as well. And then when we try to change, we realize, I will never be enough. I will never be able to earn your love.
What happens when you have constant low-grade rejection? What happens to the person who is rejected like that? The LGBTQ plus person, or the person who is a true ally trying to support their loving parent or their loving son or daughter because they are who they are in the LGBTQ community. When you are rejected by people because they don't accept where you are, it's creating anxiety, and it's difficult for you to move away from that and try to be the loving person that you should be. Ally silence, by the way, is not neutral. It's unchallenged coded language that enables harm and says, I don't disagree with you. But when you challenge them, you stand up for the rights of the LGBTQ plus community, and that is absolutely critical. That is being the true ally.
About a year or a year and a half after I had that breaking point, I, at that point, had then come to terms with my own identity as a transgender person and was ready to finally transition. And I met with the pastor at that time. The pastor was, again, very loving. He knew that there was nothing that he was going to say to me at that point, and I feel like he did not do anything to mistreat me. But he did say something that I think is very indicative of the kind of communities that we are building. He said, you know, you being here and part of this community is not going to be healthy for you or healthy for the church, because the people in the church are not going to understand you or who you are or what's going on. And I think it would be best for both your sake and their sake that you find a different church home. And he asked me at that point to go onto Facebook and unfriend everybody in the church unless I had a special relationship with them and went beyond the bounds of the church. That was a hard moment for me, but I knew that what he said at that point was honestly probably the right answer. Sure. Because it did save me from all of those people coming in being judgmental towards me, and it saved them from having to commit that judgmental act. But what does that say? When those are the kinds of communities that we're creating, is in order for you to live your most authentic life, we need to actually cut ties entirely with our community. If you're in a community that is judgmental, you can be the person that stands up and says, hey, I'm not that person. I am accepting. I don't believe that this is what the Bible says, and I'm not going to act as if it is. You can be the person that begins to make the change. And I will tell you, for those of us that are part of the LGBTQ community, we need you to be that voice of change in your community. We need you to move towards genuine acceptance.
Oh, and there's a lot of ways to do that. Some practical tips for allies, for example, would be to replace but with and. That changes the tone completely. So if you say, well, I agree with you, but I agree with you and I am here to support you. because but always negates everything you said before. You know, you're really doing a good job here, and I really like what you're doing, but... And, you know, the employee at that point, all they hear is what came after but.
Right. And that works in sales as well, that I'm trying to sell somebody, hey, you know what? You've got a great business here. Everything is going great, but
Yes. And
it would be
all.
better if you bought my advertising. They think, forget you. I don't want to be part of it. And that's how we feel in the LGBTQ community, that you say, I love you, but
Right.
it's conditional.
Yes. And conditional really is not full acceptance. That's not full affirmation. And that matters so much to both you and to the LGBTQ loved one that you're involved with. So it's really critical that you not do that.
It damages everything about the relationship. It doesn't just hurt them, which it does dramatically, but that comes back and then hurts you because now you have unknowingly damaged the relationship. And now you're wondering, it's a year down the line, a year and a half down the line, and you're saying, I don't understand why my son or daughter doesn't want to talk to me anymore. Here I've been
Yes.
so loving.
Yes.
And it's all because you were trying to give conditional acceptance and make it look as if, look at what a great loving person I'm being.
So we suggest that you switch from I love you, but to I love you and I want to understand you better. Can you imagine how much different that is going to be received? That really shows you're doing everything you can to be fully affirming.
Imagine if you heard the same kind of language, I love you, but from your LGBTQ loved one. I absolutely love you, but your straight marriage is just not something that I can accept.
I can't imagine what straight people would think if they constantly heard that. I love you, but, you know, you've got to be one of me. No, that's not going to work.
And just like you could never change to become gay or bisexual, I could never change as well to become a cisgender person. I could never stop being a transgender woman.
Yeah, and especially now that you've gone through that really difficult part. Wow.
I had my 10-year anniversary.
Now you can look back. What do you see? When you look back, how do you feel now compared to the rest of your life?
Now I know that this is who I am. And I can't imagine living anything different than that. It would be the same as if you discovered anything else about yourself. That you put off doing art and then 1 year you discovered, maybe during COVID, I need to start doing some artwork. And you realized that was not just a side project, but it was intrinsic to who you are. Or anything else about who you are. Except this runs even deeper. Once you figure it out, you can't go back.
So what can you do now? I will tell you, if you are part of the LGBTQ plus community or you are an affirming ally, challenge things like I'm offering love with strings attached. You need to absolutely challenge that. There are no strings attached to true love. Keep that in mind. And when you hear that, I encourage you to challenge that. Something like saying, you deserve love that doesn't come with conditions, disclaimers, or apologies. No. Love is unconditional. And that also, by the way, is very faith-based, unconditional love.
Boy, I love seeing a love that does not come with apologies.
We would love it if you would share this podcast with someone that would benefit from this particular podcast. Many of you have been doing that in the past, and I thank you for that.
We look at all of the numbers and we see that this is not one person here and one person there sharing, but we have a community that shares. And we would ask the rest of you as well, if you have not shared with someone, think about who might benefit from listening to this.
I recently took a trip to a few other states. I happened to pass a few of our cards out. I would like to give a shout out to someone who picked up one of those cards, a person who I don't know from Faith, South Dakota. I'm hoping you're going to come back and hear this.
And we are so grateful. And with that,
We'll see you Monday.